Hey there, my name is James, and in this video, I'll be going over some of the more advanced rules of Star Trek Into the Unknown not covered in my previous video. Hopefully you've watched that previous video, and maybe you've played a game of At Perdition's Gate, and you're ready to learn some of the more advanced rules. Let's start by discussing campaigns. When beginning a campaign, players should consult their chosen campaign arc's guide to find their starting assets, which is their roster of ships and officers they will use to create their task force for a mission. For the Coercion campaign arc, the starting ship assets for the Federation and Dominion consist of all the ships that come within the Coercion. The Federation players' starting officers for the Coercion arc are the Intrepid Captain, the Daring First Officer, Scholarly Doctor, Redoubtable Engineer, and Vigilant Security Chief. The Dominion players' starting officers for the Coercion arc are a Founder, Jem'Hadar First, Jem'Hadar Second, Karema Researcher, and Vorta Diplomat. Later missions in the Coercion campaign will introduce core points, which is the budget a player has when choosing to include ships or core officers in their task force. Shown here on the officer card and here on the shipboard, these are the amount of core points that the ship or officer costs to include in a task force. Note that some ships, like the Federation's Constellation class, award additional core points to the core budget if they are included in a fleet. For each ship included in a player's task force, a line officer matching that player's chosen faction should also be included. These line officers do not count against the core point budget for a task force. A standard task force is made up of a command liaison, a chief of operations, a head of science, and 2 specialists. Each are roles that must be filled by a player's chosen core officers to create a valid task force. Each officer card has a list of roles that the officer is eligible to fill. Note that the 2 specialist positions on a task force have no required icons. Each player should assign their core officers to ships of their choice. A player's chosen command liaison begins the game assigned to the captain's chair on a ship. In a mission played with 3 ships, each player would have 8 total officers, 5 core officers, and 3 line officers. At this step, each player's unspent core points become flex points. Players can spend flex points on including additional equipment by paying the equipment cost shown here, or by including transfer officers. Think of a player's core officers as the main cast for an episode, and the transfer officers as guest stars who may or may not appear in every episode. A campaign mission's overview will outline the transfer pool, unit pool, and equipment pool where flex points can be spent. Although later missions in the Coercion campaign arc make use of the equipment pool, no missions in the Coercion campaign arc utilize the transfer pool. However, players playing an expansion campaign should note that when including transfer officers, the flex point cost is the total of all skill levels an officer has, and not the core point cost. Then, each chosen transfer officer replaces a generic line officer assigned to a ship. When playing through a campaign, players will fill out a mission report at the end of each mission that will determine the winner, the margin of victory, and may determine some upgrades for a player's roster if certain conditions are met. To determine the overall winner of a campaign, players will track campaign points, or CP, that are calculated based on the margin of victory of each mission. If the mission was a mutual loss, neither player earns any CP. If both players tied for margin of victory and the game was not a mutual loss, both players earn 2 CP. If the margin of victory was between 1 and 3, the winner earns 3 CP while the loser earns 2. If the margin of victory was 4 or more, the winner earns 4 CP and the loser earns 1. Don't worry if you fall behind early in CP, as there is a catch-up mechanic. If a player wins a game and is trailing in CP, they gain 1 bonus CP for each 5 points they are behind. When filling out a mission report, players will also earn strategy points, or SP. Players can spend SP in a variety of ways throughout the campaign, including healing officers, repairing ships, or purchasing upgrades for their fleet. When playing a campaign, players should pay attention to their faction's strategy sheet, which gives bonus SP for performing certain actions or achieving certain conditions. This sheet also contains unlock conditions for new officers and other permanent bonuses, so remembering to complete these achievements will be important in becoming more powerful throughout the campaign. Similar to the CP comeback mechanic, there's also a provision for players who may fall too far behind on SP. If a player loses a game and has less total SP than their opponent, they gain 1 SP for every 5 points they are behind. At the end of each mission, players should also note any trauma remaining on an officer, the hull status and crew dials of each ship, and if any officers were incapacitated, captured, or lost. For each officer who was lost during a mission, roll an expertise die. If a blank or analysis result is rolled, that officer is still considered to be lost. If a success or breakthrough success is rolled, that officer suffers trauma equal to their health and is considered to be incapacitated. If a discovery result is rolled, that officer is considered to be miraculously recovered and suffers no additional trauma or effects. After a campaign mission, players can spend triage and repair points to heal and repair their officers and ships respectively. A player's triage value budget is 3 plus the highest biology skill of any available officer on their roster. A player's repair value budget is 3 plus the highest mechanics skill of any available officer on their roster. Triage and repair points are spent in the following manner. 1 triage point may be spent to remove 1 trauma from an officer. 2 triage points may be spent to increase a ship's crew dial 1 step, but not past its starting value. 1 repair point can be spent to increase the hull dial of 1 ship with heavy or severe damage. If this ship was destroyed, this costs an additional repair point. 2 repair points can be spent to increase the hull dial 1 step of a ship with medium damage. 3 repair points may be spent to increase the hull dial 1 step of a ship with light damage. Players can also spend SP to supplement their repair and/or triage values. After a mission, if an officer was not selected to participate in the mission task force, they recover 1 trauma. Similarly, a ship that was not selected for a mission is considered to be in dry dock and increases its hull dial 3 steps and its crew dial 2 steps. An officer who is lost, incapacitated, or captured is not eligible to be included in a mission task force. A ship that is disabled or destroyed is also not eligible to be included in a mission task force. When building a task force for a campaign mission, if a player ever has fewer than 5 officers, they may add a non-famed officer to their roster. A non-famed officer is any officer who does not have a dot to the left of their name. That player should decrease their SP by 1 for each officer added this way. Similarly, when building a task force for a campaign mission, if a player doesn't have enough ships to fill the mission requirement, they may take a destroyed ship and increase its hull value to the highest position within medium damage, set its crew dial to 2 steps below the starting value, then reduce their SP by 2 for each ship recovered this way. Now let's talk about how to set up an incident mission. As a reminder, an incident mission can be used to set up a single win or lose match of Star Trek Into the Unknown, but it can also be part of a campaign. Incident missions use these cards to determine the overture, situation, and complication for a mission. Players start by rolling 3 intuition dice. The player with the most successes gains the priority token and becomes the priority player. Using the overture and situation cards, players can either agree on a chosen overture and situation, or shuffle the overture and situation cards and choose one of each randomly. Note that the overture card will determine how the sector is set up, which ships are eligible to be included, and how the complication will be revealed. Next, make a deck of complication cards by looking through each complication card and including ones that have a category symbol matching either the overture or the situation. Shuffle the complication deck, and then, starting with the priority player, each player draws 2 cards from this complication deck, chooses one to place face down, and discards the other. The 2 chosen face-down complication cards will create the influence track by placing them together like this. Then place the influence token on one of the 2 short ends of the non-priority player's complication card. When the complication is triggered, the card that currently has the influence token is revealed as the complication. Players must first decide which faction they are playing, which in turn determines their task force, which is the ships and officers that are eligible to be included in the mission. When selecting ships and officers to include in a task force, that ship or officer must belong to that player's chosen faction, and have a matching icon shown here on the officer card and here on the shipboard. A standard incident mission is played with a task force consisting of 5 core officers and 50 core points to spend on purchasing said officers. Any unspent core points become flex points. Just as in a campaign, each player must create a valid task force consisting of a command liaison, chief of operations, head of science, and 2 specialists. For each ship in the task force, a line officer matching each player's chosen faction is assigned to a station in that ship. In match play, if a player wishes to include transfer officers in their task force, that player selects 6 officers from their faction who were not chosen as core officers to create their transfer pool. Shuffle the transfer pool and draw 2 officers randomly. These officers become eligible to be transfer officers that can be included in a task force by spending flex points not equal to the core point cost, but to the total level of each skill that officer has. So in this example, if the Federation player wishes to include both O'Brien and Odo as transfer officers, they would need to spend 10 remaining flex points if able, 5 for the total of O'Brien's skill levels and 5 for Odo's. Let's say we have 8 flex points left to spend, so we'll take O'Brien and spend the remaining 3 flex points on the Defiant title upgrade. Then, each chosen transfer officer replaces a generic line officer assigned to a ship. Any equipment chosen is assigned to the station matching that equipment's icon. A ship can only have one of each subtype of equipment and only one refit of any type. Each player then determines their fleet's Commodore by determining the highest ranked officer with the command role. The amount of pips determine an officer's rank, with the number of gold pips outranking the number of black pips. If 2 of a player's officers are tied for highest rank, that player determines which will be the Commodore. Each player should mark their Commodore with the Commodore token. The Commodore begins the game assigned to the captain's chair on a ship. The ship beginning the game with the Commodore aboard is known as the flagship. A player's command liaison and Commodore can be the same officer, but if they are not and if they are both assigned to the flagship, the Commodore begins the game in the captain's chair, and the command liaison is reassigned by that player to a station of their choice. The highest ranking officer on each ship must begin the game in the captain's chair. Each player should then choose 1 combat, 1 diplomacy, and 1 exploration directive card matching their chosen faction. If playing with only the core set, 1 of each type of directive card is included for the Federation and Dominion, so in this case, players should take all of the directive cards matching their faction. Then consult the overture for which side each directive card should start on. The overture will also determine the sector setup and player setup areas. A solitary sector setup looks like this. A helix sector setup looks like this. And a trinary sector setup looks like this. Next, place any command tokens as described in the overture card, followed by any anomalies or neutral units as described in the situation card. Finally, starting with a priority player, each player takes turns deploying 1 ship in their setup area. Each ship should have their starting dials set to the values marked by a star and their alert dial set to any all-clear status. And now we're ready to play an incident mission. During the setup of an incident mission, we introduced the concept of a fleet's Commodore. The Commodore gains the ability to perform a special priority action. While the Commodore is at their flagship's captain's chair, they may be committed to give a priority order to a friendly ship, auxiliary unit, or team unit in comms range of their flagship. When giving this order, if there is no committed officer at the required station, the Commodore is treated as if they are at that station and can lead a test or attack as if they were aboard that unit. Some officers have sway with other factions. When building a task force for an incident mission in match play, if a player's core officers have at least 1 sway with a different faction, that faction's officers may also be included as part of the transfer pool. After the transfer pool has been shuffled and 2 officers drawn, core officers in the task force with sway in a different faction can spend this sway in the following manner. 1 sway can be spent to select an officer matching this faction as a transfer officer. 2 sway can either be spent to select a scout, support, or specialist ship from this faction, or can be spent to select an officer matching this faction as a transfer officer. 3 sway can be spent to select a capital, scout, support, or specialist ship from this faction, and also up to 2 officers matching this faction as transfer officers. 4 sway can be spent to select any ship matching this faction, and also up to 2 officers matching this faction as transfer officers. 5 or more sway can be spent to select any 2 ships matching this faction, and also up to 2 officers matching this faction as transfer officers. If a player has at least 2 sway, they can also include equipment from the sway faction. However, if this faction equipment is equipped to a ship, the ship's faction must also match the equipment's faction. Flex points must still be spent as normal to include any equipment, ships, or officers through sway in a task force. Any officer included through sway can never become a Commodore, even if they had the highest rank and the command role. Dominion players may have noticed that the Jem'Hadar fighter has the ability to ram other ships. Let's go over a ramming example using the Jem'Hadar fighter and the Defiant as an example. You'll notice when the Jem'Hadar fighter goes down to heavy damage status, it gains access to an action called Final Attack, performed from the captain's chair. Let's say this Jem'Hadar fighter is at the heavy damage status and wishes to ram the Defiant. Final Attack allows the Jem'Hadar fighter to ram a ship in the forward arc 2 inches away. The Dominion player tests the Ops skill, adding expertise dice for discipline if applicable, and needs a number of successes greater than or equal to the Defiant's evasion, which is 2. Success! The target will suffer damage based on the ramming ship's size. A large ship deals 4 damage, a medium ship deals 3 damage, a small ship deals 2 damage, and a shuttlecraft will deal 1 damage. As a kicker, a breakthrough success can be spent to add 1 damage. Also, ramming damage is treated as though it has the Breach 2 keyword, meaning that we do not stop the hull damage dial if it goes down to a new damage status. If we flip the shipboard over for the Jem'Hadar fighter to the reverse side, we see that the ship is considered to be small, meaning that it does 2 damage to the Defiant through the ram action. However, when ramming, the rammed ship also does damage back to the attacker. The Defiant is considered to be a small ship as well, meaning the Jem'Hadar fighter also suffers 2 damage, which would completely destroy it. This attack may be worth it though in games where it can be used to take out a much more valuable target. Sometimes players may wish to settle their conflicts using negotiation and diplomacy rather than weapons fire. This is accomplished during the Hail phase. Only 1 hail can be resolved during the Hail phase. Starting with the priority player, each player has a chance to open a hail. It may be possible that no player wishes to open a hail, in which case no hails occur. To open a hail, a player must have at least 1 hail as defined by their diplomacy directive card or by certain mission hails. The steps for resolving a hail are as follows. Step 1. The hailing player chooses a unit to conduct the hail. Step 2. The hailing player may choose a readied officer attached to the hailing unit to lead the hail. If the unit has a bridge section, the chosen officer must be in the bridge. Step 3. The hailing player chooses a hail available. Step 4. The hailing player must select 1 opposing unit within comms range of the hailing unit to receive the hail. Step 5. A player whose unit answered the hail may choose an officer attached to that unit to lead the responding hail. If that unit has a bridge section, the officer must be on the bridge. Responding to a hail is done through trust tokens. Each player's trust tokens start the game face up on their ready side near that player's diplomacy directive card. After a token has been spent, flip it face down near the directive card to indicate it is no longer available for selection. These spent token numbers are public information. The token numbers represent a level of trust, with a high number representing high trust and commitment, and a low number representing defensiveness and suspicion. After a hail is open, resolving a hail is done through these steps. Step 1. Each player secretly selects one of their remaining trust tokens. Step 2. Each player simultaneously reveals their chosen token. Step 3. If an answering player reveals an asterisk, the hail is refused, and skip ahead to Step 6. Step 4. Players determine who was the most persuasive by comparing numbers. The player with the highest number is considered to be persuasive. If both numbers are tied, compare the diplomacy stat of any relevant units or leading officers on the hail. If both numbers are still tied, the priority player is considered to be persuasive. Step 5. The persuasive player gathers a number of intuition dice equal to the lowest number used in the hail, and adds expertise dice, if applicable, for any relevant skills, and performs the hail test chosen previously by the hailing player. Step 6. Resolve any effects that occur after a hail concludes. At the end of a hail phase, if either player has 1 or fewer tokens available, both players flip all of their tokens to their ready side. Some hails or other effects may refer to a concept called a joint solution. Failing a joint solution test often results in a mutual loss, where both players are considered to have lost the game. During a joint solution test, 2 breakthrough successes can be spent to earn 2 victory points, and an analysis result can be spent to add an advantage to each participating unit. Let's go over the other types of impulse maneuvers not discussed in the previous video. First, we have the lateral impulse. The lateral impulse maneuver follows the same procedure as the forward impulse maneuver discussed in the previous video, or on page 20 of the Learn to Play guide, but with the following exceptions. The unit is moved in the direction of its port or starboard side instead of its fore end. The turning tool is fitted into the slot at the fore or aft end of the ship. If moving left, the stem of the tool is turned to the right. If moving right, the stem of the tool is turned to the left. While resolving a lateral impulse maneuver, a ship treats its engine power as half rounded up, and its impulse turn value as half rounded up as well. A reverse impulse maneuver also follows the same procedure as a forward impulse maneuver, but with the following exceptions. The unit is moved in the direction of its aft end instead of its fore end. The turning tool is turned towards the fore end instead of the aft end. And while resolving a reverse impulse maneuver, a ship treats its engine power as half rounded up, and its impulse turn value is half rounded up as well. Not all of Star Trek Into the Unknown's action takes place aboard ships. Sometimes players will need to form ground units known as team units. Each team has its own stats and keyword abilities, which are described on their corresponding unit cards. Team units must always be attached to a location or attached to another unit. The type of teams a player can form are based on their faction's exploration directive card. After a team has been formed, it remains in the sector, even if the directive card is set to a side that allows for different teams. The procedure for forming a team is as follows. Step 1. Reduce the crew dial. Reduce the crew dial of the ship, forming a team by 1 step. If the crew dial is at its minimum value, no team can be formed. Step 2. Select a team unit. A player selects a team unit available from their faction's exploration card and flips the team unit card to the appropriate side. Step 3. Place the team token. Place the matching team unit token in the same section as the action that formed the team. If the chosen team token is already in play elsewhere, the team cannot be formed. The section where the token is placed cannot exceed the capacity for teams. Each ship section has a default team capacity of 1. Step 4. Optionally attach officers. Any number of friendly officers attached to the ship forming the team can be relocated from other sections of the ship and attached to the formed team. Step 5. Optionally relocate unit. The team can relocate to any section of the ship it is attached to with an open capacity for teams. Once a team is formed, a team can take an action to disband following this procedure. Step 1. Increase the crew dial. Increase the crew dial of the ship disbanding a team by 1 step. If the dial is at its maximum value, the team cannot be disbanded. Step 2. Remove team unit. Remove the team unit token from play. Step 3. Attach officers and tokens. Each officer previously attached to the disbanded team must be relocated to sections of the ship as chosen and may be assigned to an open station within that section. Advantage, peril, and victory point tokens previously attached to the disbanded unit are assigned to the ship. Teams can be given orders during the priority phase and standby phase following the same rules as other units. Teams can have one or more of the standard actions listed in the action section of their unit card and may appear without reminder text. They work as follows. Assault. This unit may relocate. If it does, add 1 peril. Then, it performs 1 or more attacks, plus skirmish to the first attack. Team units with a weapons profile follow a similar attack procedure for ships and auxiliary units. However, they do not have reserve energy and can only use their weapons power stat while performing attacks. After a team resolves 1 or more attacks, place a weapons fired token reminder on it. Raid. If this unit is at an uncontested section of an opposing space unit, test Ops plus Fieldcraft with a difficulty of X, where X is equal to the opposing space unit's Ops stat. On success, add 1 peril token to the opposing space unit per success result. As a kicker, a breakthrough success can be spent in the following way. If the space unit has a crew dial, it sustains 1 health damage unless that unit's controller chooses a friendly officer at that location to sustain 1 health damage instead. On failure, add 1 peril to the testing unit. Relocate. Relocate this unit to another location in this space unit or feature that has capacity. A team may capture an opposing vulnerable officer. An officer is considered to be vulnerable if they are not attached to a team themselves, and either of the following are true. No friendly team unit is present at their location, or the location is in a unit opposed to that officer, or is a neutral feature. When an officer is captured, attach them to the capturing team and flip them to their committed side. They cannot be readied while captured. The capturing player may relocate a captured officer during the ready phase as if they were one of that player's officers. If a captured officer is no longer attached to an opposing unit, they are no longer considered to be captured. Most ships are equipped with transporter technology, capable of transporting officers or teams to other locations. To transport personnel, follow this procedure. Step 1. Choose officer or team. An officer or team can be selected for transport so long as both the starting and final position of the transport is within range of the unit transporting them. An officer that is transported can be attached to and/or removed from a team at either the starting or final position, or both. An officer who is both committed and at a station cannot be selected for transport. Step 2. Choose destination. Choose a location with capacity within range of the transporting officer or team. If this location is shielded and has at least one reserve energy or unused shield icon, the player who controls that location may attempt to prevent the transport. If they do, the transporting unit must make a transporter interference test of difficulty X, where X is 2 plus the shield value of the chosen location. The transporting player gathers intuition dice equal to the transporting unit's science stat, and adds skill dice for each level of skill in mechanics. On success, the transporting player proceeds to step 3, and on failure, the transport is not successful and the transporting officer or team remains where they are. Step 3. Relocate personnel. Relocate the officer or team to the new location and resolve any of the effects of relocating. Although ships are the primary units in Star Trek Into the Unknown, smaller units known as auxiliary units can also enter the field of play. Examples of auxiliary units include shuttles that may have been launched from other ships, and vessels, which are larger units, like the Galaxy-class starship's saucer section. A player may never have more than 3 shuttles in a sector, but they may have as many vessels as provided by the mission, and/or that can separate, as in the case of the Galaxy-class starship. Auxiliary units can be issued orders during the priority and standby phases, and behave like ships, but with the following exceptions. Auxiliary unit sections do not belong to a specific end of a ship. Unassigned officers in the red section of an auxiliary unit are placed near the helm. Each auxiliary unit has a card that describes its stats, weapons, and actions. When tracking damage on an auxiliary unit card, use the damage status indicator token. Note that the token begins covering all damage statuses. Just as with the damage dial, the damage token stops moving when a new damage status is revealed. Note that damage status icons can appear on the track as well as damage statuses. When advancing the damage token, check to see if there is a damage icon immediately to the right of the damage status. If there is, reveal that icon as well. For example, when the Galaxy-class saucer section advances from heavy damage to severe damage, it reveals the disabled icon as well. If it takes any further damage, it reveals the destroyed icon, and the unit is removed from play. An auxiliary unit may also have shield icons that correspond to either end of the ship. When suffering damage to either end of the ship, for each damage cancelled by the shields, place a trauma token over the shield icon on the appropriate end of the ship to cancel that damage. If an attack does not specify an end of the ship to suffer damage, an auxiliary unit may use any remaining shield icons to cancel that damage. During the ready phase, remove all trauma tokens from shield markers on an auxiliary unit. Some ships have the ability to launch auxiliary units like shuttles. To perform an auxiliary unit launch, follow these steps. Step 1. Place turning tool. Place the turning tool with its circular head fitted into any slots at that station's end of the ship. Align the tool's central notch to the center dot of the slot. Step 2. Optionally adjust heading. Rotate the turning tool up to 3 notches to either side. Note that it is not necessary to stop on specific notches. Step 3. Place auxiliary unit. Place the unit in play with either of its base side's aft straight edges along the turning tool's stem. The unit's position can be adjusted along the tool, but it must be placed so that the point where the straight edge ends is no farther than the tool's notched end. The unit cannot overlap or be overlapped by another unit or feature. Step 4. Remove the turning tool. Step 5. Optionally attach personnel. This applies only to shuttles. Friendly mobile personnel, that is officers and teams, attached to the launching ship can be attached to the launch unit, up to its capacity, and located in a section or station of the launching player's choice. Some ships can separate into multiple units, such as the Galaxy-class starship, which separates its saucer section vessel from its star drive. While separated, the primary ship unit continues to use its display, but attaches a card that modifies its abilities. The secondary unit that is launched uses its auxiliary unit card. The units remain separated until the auxiliary unit docks with the ship unit. To perform a separation, follow these steps. Step 1. Launch Auxiliary Unit. Launch the unit referred to by the separation ability, following the procedure for launching discussed previously. The launching player places that unit's card in their side of the play area. If the separation ability does not specify an arc, the auxiliary unit can be launched from any of the turning slots at that station's end of the ship. Step 2. Attach display card. Slide the end of the card with the station icon face up under the ship display at the matching station, leaving its text exposed. Then, adjust any dials as instructed by the display card's text. Step 3. Attach personnel and equipment. Each officer and team attached to the ship before separation must declare which unit they are attached to. Friendly officers and teams can be attached to either unit, but must be located in the section or station of either unit that matches their current location, if able. If there is no matching location available, that officer or team is placed on the bridge. Opposing officers and teams must remain attached to the ship and cannot be attached to the launch auxiliary unit. Any mission equipment stays with the primary unit. An auxiliary unit can dock with a ship at 2 inches after that auxiliary unit performs an engage impulse maneuver. When an auxiliary unit docks with a ship, that auxiliary unit is removed from the sector and its mobile personnel tokens become attached to the ship. To dock a unit, follow these steps. Step 1. Declare dock. The docking unit must declare the ship it will dock with. To be eligible, the ship must have a cargo bay section with a launch ability and must be at 2 inches of the docking unit. If the docking unit is opposed to the ship, a player who controls the ship may choose to prevent the dock. A secondary unit may only dock with its primary unit. Step 2. Remove auxiliary unit. The docking unit's player removes it from the sector. That unit's card remains at their side of the play area. If the docking unit is separated from the primary unit, as in the case of the saucer section and star drive auxiliary units, reattach the minis. Step 3. Attach personnel tokens. Each officer and team previously attached to the docking unit must be attached to the ship. The ship's owner chooses which section or station each officer or team is assigned to. Any sensor lock condition tokens previously assigned to the docking unit are discarded. If the docking unit was previously separated from its primary unit, adjust that ship's dials as necessary, up to its maximum, and remove the separation display card from the ship. Some missions may include neutral units known as hazard units. Hazard units have their own unit cards and behave like auxiliary units, except they are opposed to each player, activate during the hazard phase, and must be assigned a number of actions as described on the back of their unit card, performing any applicable actions in the order indicated. The trailing player, that is the player with the fewest current victory points, activates any hazard units during the hazard phase, resolving their actions as indicated, and makes any decisions for those units within the limits of what is described on their unit cards. There are 2 types of hazard units: constructs and creatures. Sections of a construct have unlimited capacity for officers, but only capacity for 1 team unit per player. Creature units have no capacity for officers or teams. In the previous video, we discussed hostile acts, such as attacking or ramming another ship. Some directive cards can refer to aggressive acts. These include attacking a friendly auxiliary unit, projectile, or team, capturing a friendly officer, refusing a hail, raiding a friendly space unit, or transporting an opposing team unit onto a location in a friendly unit. Players should check their faction's exploration directive card whenever an aggressive act occurs, as there might be consequences for doing so. Some units can coerce opposing units to inflict harm upon their morale. When a unit takes an action or resolves an ability that coerces another, the coerced unit does the first of the following it is able to do. If the unit has no crew dial, it removes 1 advantage. If it cannot, it adds 1 peril. If the unit has a crew dial at an inspired state, it reduces the crew dial by 1. If the unit has a crew dial at any other state, it removes 1 advantage. If it cannot, it adds 1 peril. Some space units can take an action to evacuate, such as a ship with escape pod equipment. When the unit evacuates, it can launch an escape pod projectile unit with some of its key officers attached. Even if the unit is destroyed afterwards, its personnel can potentially be recovered. To evacuate, follow this procedure. Step 1. Optionally form team. The launching unit may form up to 1 available team, reducing its crew dial as normal. Step 2. Attach personnel. Each officer and team attached to the launching unit must declare which unit they are attached to. Friendly officers or captured officers can be attached to either unit. Up to 1 friendly team can be attached to the escape pod. Place officer cards that are attached to the escape pod, but not its team, near their former ship display. Banked victory points on the launching unit must be attached to the escape pod. Any equipment stays with the ship. Step 3. Launch escape pod. Launch an escape pod unit following the projectile launch procedure. The launching player transfers that ship's ID token to the escape pod token to distinguish it from other escape pod units. The pod can be launched from any of the unit's turning slots. The launcher's turn value is treated as impulse turn 2, regardless of the unit's torpedo launcher values. A ship may always launch escape pods, regardless of the launcher status shown on the alert dial. Some mission complications add reinforcement units to a player's fleets. If a complication adds reinforcements, follow these steps. Step 1. Select units. Each player references the complication card based on the type of mission. If the mission adds units, each player takes the listed units or chooses them from the icons shown. This can exceed their fleet's starting number of units. If the mission replaces units, each player takes the listed units or chooses their units from those matching the icons shown, starting with the priority player and taking turns to choose one unit at a time. This cannot exceed their fleet's starting number of units, and each chosen unit must match a unit the fleet started the game with that has been destroyed. In incident missions, unless it is specified that the unit is added, a unit is only ever replaced. Step 2. Assign officers. Each player assigns one copy of their faction's line officer to any station they choose within the bridge section of each reinforcement ship. Step 3. Deploy units. Starting with the priority player, players take turns deploying their units until both players' reinforcement units are deployed. Units must be deployed ships first, then any other auxiliary units, following any additional instructions in the story mission or incident mission's sector setup. Introduced in subsequent expansions, some ships have the ability to cloak and make their true position unknown to the opponent. In order to cloak, the Cloak Ready indicator must be visible on the alert dial window. When cloaking, place a tracking marker at the base of the ship performing the cloak. Remove the ship and replace it with the Wake marker, aligning the Wake marker with the tracking marker. Secretly set the stealth tracker with the ship's true distance and position, which would be measured from the Wake marker. The ship is now cloaked. It removes any sensor lock tokens on its base. While cloaked, the ship cannot attack and cannot be attacked. It can still launch probes and auxiliary units, but not torpedoes. It can still transport personnel, but its locations cannot be the target of an opponent's transport. Its sensor and comm ranges are reduced to 2 inches and cannot be increased. Its instrument power is reduced to 0. When performing a maneuver, all maneuvers are performed with the Wake marker instead, and a cloaked ship may only select a warp, forward impulse, or a come about maneuver. A ship may also deploy in the cloaked status by paying an amount of reserve energy equal to the cloaking action cost. Note that deploying cloaked is not an order, and no officer may be committed to this action, so all costs are paid in reserve energy in this case. When a cloaked ship decloaks, it reveals its stealth tracker. Then place a ruler on the top of the Wake marker with its starting end aligned with the letter indicated on the telemetry dial. The ruler must be placed so that its starting end is at the point of the letter circle farthest from the center of the Wake marker, and its edge is aligned with the line that runs through that letter. Then measure a number of inches equal to the number on the distance telemetry dial, then place the cloaked ship's unit so that the edge of its base is at the measured distance, keeping the decloaked ship in the same alignment as the Wake marker. The decloaked ship must be placed within the sector, and its base cannot overlap or be overlapped by another ship. If the decloaked ship's position is not valid, move the ship along the ruler a minimum distance towards the Wake marker to achieve a valid position. If a valid position cannot be achieved, an opponent places the ship at a position overlapping the Wake marker. If a valid position overlapping the Wake marker still cannot be achieved, an opponent places the ship as close to the Wake marker as possible. Then remove the Wake marker and ruler and check ranges to any units, features, or game components and resolve any abilities that apply. If the ship decloaks outside the sector, or decloaks in a different system or region of space than it was when it initially cloaked, it sets its reserve energy dial to 0. For example, if a ship decloaked and would now require its owner to add, remove, or change any system ID tokens on that ship's base, it would set its reserve energy dial to 0. If a ship's reserve energy dial was already at 0, it adds 3 peril tokens. While a cloaked ship's Wake marker is within sensor range of another unit, that unit gains access to a new action called Detect Cloak, with a symbol matching the instrument station. To perform Detect Cloak, test Ops, plus navigation, and reroll sensor power with a difficulty equal to 2 plus the cloaked ship's evasion. On success, the cloaked ship's owner must reveal a telemetry window, which gives a hint on where the cloaked ship's true position is. As a kicker, 2 analysis results can be spent to add 1 advantage to the testing unit. Other effects may force a cloaked ship to prove its position, or force the cloaked ship to decloak altogether. If the wake marker is at range of any effect that would cause it to suffer damage or peril, or is at range of a feature such as an anomaly during the hazard phase, it must prove its position by revealing one of the telemetry windows. More commonly, an opponent may force a cloaked ship to prove its position by firing a torpedo. If the wake marker is within 12 inches of any torpedo, the cloaked ship must prove its position. To prove position, open the minimum number of telemetry windows necessary in order to provably demonstrate the actual position of the cloaked ship is not within range of the game effect. If a window is already open that can prove position, it is not necessary to open another one. For example, let's say this torpedo was here, within the 12-inch range of the wake marker that requires position to be proven. The Klingon player could reveal either piece of information on the telemetry dial to prove position. The magenta quadrant proves the ship would be unaffected by the torpedo at any distance. Similarly, the blue position indicator proves that the ship would be unaffected by the torpedo at any quadrant. If neither piece of information in the telemetry window could prove position, the cloaked ship is forced to decloak, and possibly suffers the ramifications of whatever game effect forced the ship to decloak. And those are the additional rules for Star Trek Into the Unknown. There are many tokens and keywords that were not covered in this video, but if you have questions about how those work, you can look those up in the rulebook or online, as there are far too many to cover in this video, and there are still being more added to the game. If you found this video helpful, please let me know in the comments, and with that, you should be able to continue your trek where no one has gone before, into the unknown.